First of all, I want to thank Emily and Shelley and the Soul Collective for even inviting me and considering me to come to this. This is such an honor, and it is particularly, I think, touching to me, this idea of planting something, planting hope, planting self-care, things that we really need in the world, and often I am out of in this crazy time that we're living in. But one of the things that I want to talk about tonight, and one of the stories I want to share with you, is about what has been planted in me by the people that I love. I really think those of you who don't think you are storytellers, I would encourage you to think again. Because we all have stories to share. We all have stories to tell. And you never know, that small story that you think means nothing, it was just an incident, just a blip in your life, somebody really needs to hear that story. And they need to hear that story from you. So please, go out into the world and share more stories. Tell your stories. The only thing you need to tell a story is somebody to hear it. And you can always find somebody to hear it. I want to really honor all of the wonderful storytellers who came before me tonight. These wonderful, wonderful stories. It's how we learn about ourselves. It's how we learn about each other. It's how we, I think, can really heal the world by sharing these stories of pain and triumph and trauma and joy. And it's, I think, particularly important for us as Black women, as women of color, to share these stories, because often the narrative that we hear about us is not the narrative that we create for ourselves. These stories that we heard earlier tonight, all the ghosts of the warriors and the heroes that they conjured, make me think about my life, about the gifts that I have been given, the gifts that I take for granted, and what's been planted in me. I think about the greatest privilege that I've ever had, and that is the people who have loved me, that raised me and taught me, that stood between me and the darkness. I think about my parents, Minnie Nell and Johnny Leroy, public school librarian and a Pullman porter come dining car cook on the railroad. My mother, fiercely righteous and tough as nails, who plucked out spirituals on the piano on weekend mornings and loved to sing, who pulled me into her lap every night and read me a story, filling my world with dreams and stories from Baldwin to Hemingway to Wharton, her favorite authors. She insisted that I never attend the school where she taught. Thank God for that. She wanted me to have the chance to be my own person and to make my own mistakes. As Willa, not as Mrs. Taylor's, the librarian's daughter. And I cannot say how grateful I am for that, because I made a lot of mistakes. I think about my dad, Johnny, a man of immense intellect, but very little formal schooling. He dropped out in 10th grade when his father died, so he could support his mom and his sister. He was a voracious reader, like my mom, but he loved nonfiction and political discourse. He was gone 4 days a week on the Southern Pacific Railroad run from Dallas to Denver, but when he came home on the weekends, he took me with him to the barbershop to hang out with his fellas and kind of show me off. He loved to dance and had absolutely no rhythm. He looked more like Muhammad Ali than he did Chubby Checker when I tried to teach him the twist. He showed me, though, how to treat women and how I should be expected to be treated by the way that he treated the women and the people in his life. He schooled me on Aretha Franklin and Dexter Gordon and Miles Davis and John Coltrane, and he snuck me my first sip of scotch on the back porch of our house listening to Jackie Robinson hit a home run on the radio. I think about Daddy's sister, my Aunt Benny, who lived in Fort Worth, which was, at that time, it seemed forever away, but it's just a half an hour drive, who would always bring me something special from all the places that she traveled. And then she would regale me with those stories about ocean voyages and ancient marketplaces. She and I would trace her journeys on a map that we dotted with pens and with photographs, ensuring that her only niece, one day we'll see these places together. She died too soon for that, for us, for me. I think about my grandfather, my mother's father, Prince Fowler Jackson. He was a barrel-chested, blackety-black man with a booming bass voice and a penchant for white suits, who only drove Cadillacs and always carried a Bible with a pistol stuck in the middle. Papa, which is what I called him, was an African Methodist Episcopal presiding elder, which is sort of like a gospel district manager, right? And he traveled all over Texas to preach and build churches. He and my grandmother helped build Paul Quinn College, one of the first black colleges in the country for people. You see, I grew up in the segregated South. And a black man driving a Cadillac on the back roads through Jim Crow, Texas, was not for the faint of heart or the unarmed. Even in my all-black enclave of cosmopolitan Dallas, we were all admonished, be in before the street lights come on, because all the adults knew what could happen. Papa, who Nana kept a close eye on, Papa taught me how to fish, he taught me how to hunt, and he taught me how to play checkers. Although he always beat me, much to the chagrin of my mother and my grandmother. Won't you let that child win the game? They would admonish. Papa would lean back in that Queen Anne chair in the living room, fix him with a smile as he removed his glasses and pointed to me and pronounced, "Ain't nobody gonna give that child anything. She gonna have to win and fight for everything that she gets. She might as well start learning how to do that on this board." They'd decry, my grandmother, Nana, and Mama would get all upset, and they would decry how unfair it was, how I was just a little girl. All the while, I'd be setting those checkers back up on the board for another match, determined that this time, I was gonna beat him. I finally did when I was 19. But most of all, I think about Nana, my maternal grandmother. Willa Lee Jackson, the woman whose name I carry, was the second youngest of 14 children, the eldest born into slavery. Nana was as fair as Papa was dark. Her complexion and her long silken hair a gift of her Mama Hattie's Cherokee roots. She was polished and refined. She had taught history at Paul Quinn. She and Papa had worked as missionaries, and she was a woman of regal elegance. She was the mother of the church, of course, the honorific accorded to the preacher's wife. But for me, she was Nana, who baked me vanilla muffins whenever I got an A, who sliced boiled eggs and arranged them on top of the spinach to try and help me eat them, who fed me chicken and rice soup and Ritz crackers whenever I was sick, and who taught me everything I know about justice. These people, the aunties and the uncles and the play cousins and the neighbors and teachers that peopled my world, taught me every day, not by word, but by example, that the time is always right to do what's right. They showed me how to live a life of quiet courage and honor. Aunt Harriet, who would get up at 4 a.m. every holiday Sunday and go to care and cook for the white family that she worked for before coming home to care and cook for us. And she did that so that we didn't have to. My Auntie Jewel, who started a newspaper to report the news and the truth of black lives in a segregated Dallas, where blacks couldn't even rate an obituary in the 2 white newspapers. I think about the privilege of sitting among them in Nana and Papa's living room in 1963 as we watched CBS cover the March on Washington and Dr. King's speech. And sitting together again in that living room in 1969, watching the coverage of the Stonewall riots and feeling a kinship within, for me. In that moment when people rose up and stood up and decided that this was their line in the sand, I recognized Nana and Papa and Jewel, not because they were queer, but because they too had known when it was time to rise up and fight, no matter what the odds were. The time to do right is not just about the heroic moments, when we take to the streets so we stand our ground. It's not only the times when we stand up to bullies, when we shout, "Never again," or "Time's up," or "Black Lives Matter." Those moments matter, yes, they do. But mostly, it's in the everyday struggles. When we stop to talk to the homeless woman that we would usually stride by. When we put down our tech and listen to each other with an open heart. It's when we recognize the humanity in every human, regardless of their circumstance and regardless of where they come from, or what they have to offer, or who they voted for. As I think about King's words and this quote, I also remember one of Nana's favorite prayers, something she taught me a long time ago that I have always tried to live up to. It speaks to the life of Dr. King, but it also so much speaks to the many ancestors who sacrificed and built a way for us to be here tonight. Lord, help me live day to day in such a self-forgetful way that even when I kneel to pray, my prayer shall be of others. Help me in the work I do to ever be sincere and true, and know that all I do for you must needs be done for others. Yes, others, Lord. Yes, others. Let this be my motto be. Help me live for others, so that I may live for thee. Thank you.